Okay, everyone. Wednesday morning. It's the day of the game, Atalanta versus Celtic, and we're all hyped here. A full bumper crowd in place. Tony's in his regular haunt now, live in Bergamo. Ryan, you're in your regular haunt, I guess, as well. Um,
Bridge. It's not as good as Bergamo, to be honest. But I'm here. I've made it. It's match day, so
I've not quite got the amazing background that I did last night, but I'm still in Brisbane and it is baking hot here. Probably even warmer than where you are, Tony. And we've got Alistair on as well. I'll allow you to do the honours and just explain what Alistair's doing here, right?
yeah, Alistair's going to give us a wee bit of an insight on tonight's opponents. He's an Italian football expert. I believe that you're based in Italy as well, Alistair. I don't know if you want to talk a bit about yourself and your backstory with regard to Italian football.
Yeah, I've been based in Rome since 2018, covering Italian football predominantly, although a few other things as well. But yeah, that's the story, really. Probably shouldn't spend the time telling you my life story, but yeah, it's been just over 6 years and down in Rome now. Yeah.
A Scotsman in Italy. I'm sure you'll tell us lots about Atalanta. Alistair's here to cover Atalanta and talk about maybe Gasperini and the current players, maybe Retegui as well, and Adamola Lookman. You know, a couple of the household names that people know about already this season. But Celtic do take on Atalanta in the Champions League tonight, so he'll give us an expert view on all things Gasperini and Atalanta.
Should we be worried, Alistair? Are Atalanta a good side?
Well, probably to kick off with, I mean, Celtic should always be worried playing away in Europe, shouldn't they? I mean, that's what recent history has told us. But it's a funny time to play Atalanta because they've really taken a bit of time to get together. I wrote a piece in Celtic Way in the Herald yesterday, basically about how Gasperini has once again rebuilt this team over the summer and had to deal with some really big, unexpected issues because you mentioned Retegui right at the start, but he wasn't even supposed to be at Atalanta this year. Gianluca Scamacca was supposed to be their number 9. He was their top scorer last season. He snapped his ACL in pre-season. Giorgio Scalvini is basically one of the most exciting developing young defenders in Italy. He did his ACL, out for the season. They lost Koopmeiners, who was their best midfielder last season when they won the Europa League. He moved to Juventus. Adamola Lookman, who you mentioned, was basically spending the whole summer trying to get moved to PSG and wasn't very happy about having to stay. So he didn't even take part in the first few games because there was a bit of a kind of freezing out of the squad while that was being sorted. So they signed 10 new players. And this is the amazing thing about Gasperini and Atalanta, really, is the way that despite all of this kind of chaos that you would usually cause enormous disruption to any team, Gasperini does seem to find a way of being able to kind of grab all these various pieces and put them together to make them a recognizably Atalanta side who play this 3-4-3, who play this man marking all over the pitch, this intense style, this attacking bravado. So they've only just got there. That's why I'm saying about it feels like a strange time to judge whether the timing for Celtic is good or not, because they've just won 3 games in a row, but before then they got off to a really slow start. And the teams they've beaten in those 3 games haven't been the strongest opponents either. So I think it's not great timing in the sense that it feels like Atalanta have just kind of managed to find that identity and got this team to gel, and some of their players who we'll talk about are in really great form. But we still aren't far enough along in the season to really be able to say this is the same level of Atalanta that we saw last year.
Okay. I mean, the man-for-man stuff, I think, is going to be interesting to see that playing out. And as we said last night, Tony, it does concern me a little bit because Celtic, I think, struggle at times against these high-pressing teams, sometimes to be able to play out.
Can we play the Atalanta that are struggling at the minute? Can we play that one? Can that Atalanta turn up tonight and everything kind of a bit disjointed? But yeah, we know Gasperini has worked wonders. 9 years we were talking about as a manager in Italy, some feat. and he really has this team playing well. But that's my worry, Hamish, about the man-for-man marking in the high press. Celtic struggle with that, don't they? They have struggled with that, and as Alistair said, talk about a positive start. Should we be worried? It's like it's Celtic in the Champions League, shrug of the shoulders. Every one of us was like, "You're right, indeed." You could have ended the podcast there and then, couldn't you? Celtic fans like that, but you know, the manager said himself last night as well when he was asked about looking forward to the challenge. He said, "But you've always got to hope that you can get a result." And Celtic just have to be better, Hamish, than they showed in match day 2. And I think a lot of the supporters would accept that they're up against a team whose trajectory is on the rise big time, but they want a better showing than they got in Germany, and the chips fall where they may. But when you hear Alistair talking about Atalanta and despite the players that they've lost and players being upset, I wanted Ademola Lookman not to have patched things up. I was hoping he was still on the huff, Alistair, but clearly not. And Brendan Rodgers spoke very highly of him, and he said that he came close to signing for Celtic, really close. But as we talked about last night, Ryan, close but no cigar, another one of those filed under coulda, woulda, should have, you know. But I think tonight Celtic supporters are just hoping that Celtic put up a much better showing than they did in Germany and show that they're a much better team than that.
Yeah, I just think for me, Celtic, and I always say it, and it's such a cliche, but they've got to control the controllables tonight. They've got to control their own performance. And a large part of why, I mean, Dortmund were clinical on match day 2, but at the same time, Celtic shot themselves in the foot numerous times, giving the ball away in really bad areas, making bad decisions on the ball, and getting punished every single time. Now, Dortmund showed last night that anything can happen in the Champions League. You know, you come up against Celtic, you beat them 7-1, and then all of a sudden you get the might of Real Madrid. So anything can happen in the Champions League, whether that be shock wins, comeback wins. But I've got to say, admittedly, I'm less confident about this game than I was going into the Borussia Dortmund game, because I know what's coming with regard to Atalanta. If you've watched Gasperini's teams, you know how high pressing they are, man for man. The players that they've got, I know they've got good individuals in the team, but it's more about the team collective as well, and every player has their own unique function. That's what worries me tonight for Celtic personally. Not just the players like Lookman and Retegi, but they've also got Ederson in the midfield as well, who was immense against Bayer Leverkusen in the Europa League final. So they've got players all over the park, but Celtic have got to control what they can control and put in a good performance, and then the rest, we'll see what happens on the night. But they can't give Atalanta any more encouragement than they'll already have at home in Italy. Celtic have just got to do their best, put in their best performance and see what happens on the night, but don't make it easy for them. I think that would be my main message to Celtic.
Who are the players we should be looking out for, Alistair? We've probably mentioned a few of them already. I watched a bit of their 2 matches so far they've played. I think the guy Lazar Samardzic looks like a really good player, and he was actually the guy they moved for after missing out on Matt O'Reilly. So there's a kind of Celtic link to that as well. But they've got a number of really good players. Brandon Soppy, remember him from a few years ago? Celtic were linked with him. So a team filled with players who could hurt us tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I should say I do have prepared some reasons for optimism for you guys, so we can get onto that after I've told you about all the scary stuff, maybe. But Atalanta's kind of, when I was talking about these Gasperini building these different teams over the 8 years he's been there, he's a funny coach, because while many teams might, you know, build from the back up to the top, he tends to do vice versa. And so his teams are kind of best known for whoever was at the attacking end in those particular eras, whether that's, to begin with, it was when Papa Gomez and Josip Ilicic were there, and then there were the years when Duvan Zapata and Luis Muriel were the kind of star guys. And then last year, it looked like this kind of new era was going to be all about Lookman and Scamacca. But quite a lot's changed since then. Obviously, I mentioned Scamacca's injury, and that was they signed Retegi within two or 3 days of that injury, so he was pretty much ready to go almost immediately. but he wasn't a player that there were huge guarantees about. I mean, a lot of people already know this story, but I'll just briefly explain his backstory because it's a bit of a strange one, because Italy's search for a number 9 has been this kind of absolutely endless debate ever since, well, before Euro 2020 even. Where have all the strikers gone? The great number 9s, the Christian Vieris, they've all disappeared. And there's been a real problem for the national team. And when Roberto Mancini was in charge, he basically got a call from Juan Sebastian Veron, who used to play with the Lazio, saying, you should have a look at this guy who's playing in Argentina. And this is Matteo Retegui, who was born in Argentina, brought up in Argentina, didn't speak any Italian, but he was eligible to play for Italy through his grandfather from Sicily. And he was actually on loan at Tigre, which was, top flight team in Argentina, from Boca Juniors. And they sent some guys to have a look at him. And then he got a call up to the national team last March, and nobody had even heard of this guy. Like I say, he didn't even speak Italian. He scored in his debut against England. Looked pretty good. Scored in his second game as well, but that was against Malta. And then that summer got the move to Genoa. So suddenly we were seeing a lot of him at Genoa. But there weren't huge guarantees, I guess, because he did pretty well. But I think it was 9 goals in all competitions for Genoa last season. So the most impressive thing about him is that he's 25, but it feels like he's one of these players who's making that kind of rapid development and growth now rather than doing that age 21, 22. And his game is getting better and better. He's got a lot better in the air, his movement, speed, everything really. He's working really well with the team. And now he's top scorer in Serie A. I think if you've seen the goal he scored on Sunday against Venezia, it's a great example of, I think, the confidence he's playing with now, because he kind of manages to chip the keeper from 12 yards, which is quite impressive. He also got an assist in that game, so he's linking up a lot better, which is something Spalletti, the Italy coach, complimented him for. But it's not about Retegui and Lookman so much as about Retegui and Lookman and De Ketelaere. They've now got this trident rather than a partnership. And De Ketelaere is kind of like the guy nobody seems to be talking about this season, but he is... he's this kind of like creative attacking midfielder who there was a lot of hype around when he moved to AC Milan a few years ago. Didn't work out from there at all. Went on loan to Atalanta last year and made a breakthrough. And now he's kind of found a home there and become more established there. But there are mixed reports talking about Lookman about whether he'll even start tonight, because Mario Pasalic does sometimes come into that team instead if they're wanting to play in a slightly different way, and he can play as more of a number 10. He has kind of a goal threat from midfield, scored at the weekend. But it kind of depends what's happening in defence, I think, with that, because they've got a few injury doubts in defence, and that might mean Martin de Roon has to move back from midfield and blah, blah, blah. But I think the main causes for concern for Celtic beyond those front three we're talking about is the wing backs, because they've always been key for Atalanta. Guys like Robin Gosens and Hateboer and Zappacosta over the years have been absolutely crucial to the way they play. And now with Bellanova, who's a really explosive guy on the right, great pace, good crossing, and Ruggeri on the left, who is a kind of really exciting up-and-coming young wing-back as well. They've got possibilities of kind of really stretching the game and pulling defenders out of position and so on from those positions too. But like I said, afterwards I can
give me something positive. Give me something.
It all sounds rather ominous, doesn't it? Can Alistair stop talking now?
I'm ready to chuck this video, so come on, Alistair, give me something positive.
My laptop's been launched from the old town of Bergamo. Yeah, we need something positive, Alistair, to cling on to, so you can let us know what we can cling to.
Well, okay, what I would say is that in a selection standpoint, they don't have a full selection in defence, particularly. Gasperini described it as an emergency yesterday. I think he was overdoing it a bit, but basically two of their starting centre-backs, Heen and Kolasinac, have had a high fever this week. They've not been well. It looks like they've been called up to the squad. They might start as well, but they're definitely not 100%. It might require a reshuffle Darun, who's a central midfielder, does sometimes step back into defence, but it's something they'd rather avoid because Darun and Ederson's partnership in the centre of that midfield has really been, they've played almost every minute of every game this season. They've been completely crucial to this new iteration of Atalanta. So if you disrupt that, I think that could have a disruptive effect on this team. It would stop Gasperini from being able to do that option of playing Pasalic instead of Lookman further up the field, because Pasalic would have to go into that kind of deeper midfield position. But on a more technical level, like I say, it's early days in saying that this Atalanta team is flying away to have another amazing season. They've had 3 wins in a row, but like I say, all against quite limited opposition. And when you look at the games they've had so far against teams that you would say kind of play similarly to Celtic, I'm looking at the games against Como and Bologna, because Como and Bologna both play 4-3-3 and both like to attack and try and kind of run the game. And Como beat Atalanta 3-2 in Bergamo not very long ago, about a month or so ago. Bologna, likewise, kind of transitioning to that more attacking 4-3-3 style, they managed to get a draw against them as well. So it's not like Atalanta are running over teams, and it's not like any team who goes there playing an expansive 4-3-3 is going to get ripped apart, because otherwise Atalanta would have won Serie A by now. They would have won the Champions League by now if they were destroying any team who comes and tries to play expansively against them. Atalanta themselves can get turned over. They got absolutely demolished by Inter earlier this season, lost 4-0. And it does happen from time to time where they suffer heavy defeats when things don't work out for them. So I think with a few of those selection things and a couple of examples of when teams, not exactly the same, but who play a similar style to Celtic, where it's worked for them, it's not like we can't imagine a world in which Celtic can get a result. Sorry, I think that's a motorbike driving past my window. But yeah, I think with that in mind, it's probably going to be quite an open game. And I think Celtic are, in this case, I know there's been a lot of talk around, does Rodgers need to change, become more pragmatic in these games and so on? I think in this case, I'd say no, because I think Celtic's best chance is to embrace an open game. Atalanta are going to want to play an open game. Gasperini said as much yesterday. And if it becomes a shootout of just who can score the most and in a broken field, kind of who can create the more opportunities, for me, that feels like a better, like that gives Celtic a better chance than if they tried to camp in. Atalanta are used to playing teams in Serie A who play with a back five and try and camp in against them. It doesn't stop them. So I don't know how encouraging you find that, but I think there are a few things, there are a few bits and pieces there that certainly make this not seem like an impossible task for me.
Okay, that's interesting. We are playing Atalanta tonight. We're not playing Manchester City or Bayern Munich. I think if you flip the games and we play Atalanta's second match, given the confidence we had going into that game, I think we'd have been having similar conversations that we did before the Dortmund game. I think people would have been fancying us. I think it's obviously it's a lot about Atalanta. We know they're a good team. I think a lot of the pessimism I'm seeing is down to Celtic, though, and based off that match day 2 performance against Dortmund. And I think Celtic will be better tonight. I think the team will be really motivated and ready to prove a point. Whether that's good enough to get a result, Tony, I don't know, but I think Celtic will be eager to show that was a one-off for this team on match day 2.
I'm quite encouraged by that if you're going to play Atalanta, that's the way to play them in an open game. So that's given me a bit of hope what Alistair's saying there. Because I guess Celtic are going to try and go toe-to-toe then. It's probably the only chance that they've got, as Alistair said. And we'll see how that goes. Because let's be honest, you talk about Atalanta's front men. Celtic have got a front three as well that can cause problems. Well, but they have to protect the football better than they did in Germany. And I think Ryan was talking about control the controls. But we were saying last night, see the basics. Celtic have to do the basics. a lot better. And I'm talking about gaining territory, out balls and stuff like that with the front three and taking it walks and gaining free kicks. But if that's the case, I'm encouraged by Alistair saying that if Atalanta are not playing with a normal defence, Celtic can create opportunities. They did it in Dortmund. It just so happens that they were well behind at the time, but they brought themselves back at one each. There was an instant response from Celtic on that night, and obviously it went wrong like 90 seconds or 2 minutes later. But you know, Hamish, I'm like you. I've got confidence that Celtic will be better tonight, and professional pride tells you that they will be better. I'll mute myself.
It's a difference from the dogs. Alistair, I know you've got a busy morning, so I'll just ask you one more question, and then we'll let Brian speak a bit. What kind of atmosphere are Celtic going into tonight? I know that Atalanta have kind of modernised their stadium over the past few years. It looks a really good stadium now. And again, I watched the opening game against Arsenal, and the atmosphere was really good that night. So what kind of atmosphere would you expect tonight?
Yeah, great. I mean, I think it's the best time for Celtic to go there, to be honest, because they've had this renovation been going on with the stadium. Atalanta are one of just 3 teams in Serie A who actually own their own ground, which is a whole other thing. But it's allowed them to basically tear down the old curva sections behind the goal, which used to be the classic kind of banks of concrete with a running track and all that. It used to be quite an ugly place, to be honest. And they've renovated not only the old stands and kind of kept some of the old features, but they built the 2 new kind of curva sections behind the goals as well. And the final one was completed just a few weeks ago. So it took 5.5 years. They pumped, I think, 100 million euros into it. And Arsenal was the first European game that they had at home with the completed stadium. So I think it does add another element because it kind of traps in the noise now a bit. Because it's not, like you said, you're not playing one of the European giants here. This is a small town and quite a small club attendance-wise. But I think they'll still make a racket because they're still enjoying every moment of being here. You know, it feels like they've now established themselves as European regulars. But like I said before, they hadn't touched the Champions League until 2019. They had no expectations other than avoiding relegation until about 8 or 9 years ago. So this is still an amazing thing for them and their fans. So yeah, I do think it's a good time to go. It's also a nice stadium because it's walkable from the city centre. You know, you can kind of everyone kind of go there in a big convoy, and yeah, it's a good place to go. I think they shouldn't be fearful of the atmosphere, as in it's not one of the places that people talk about like this is a cauldron where you can't get results kind of thing. I think all Italian stadiums can be pretty hostile, and on European nights they try their best to make it even more hostile. But it's not. We're not talking about one of the places that is kind of famed within Italy or Serie A for kind of intimidating opposition into wetting themselves and not turning up. So they should survive on that count.
Perfect. Okay, Alistair, we'll let you go because, as I say, I know you've got long. Thanks so much for coming on and shedding some light on Atalanta.
That's all right, guys. Thanks for having me. And yeah, good luck tonight.
Yeah,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Fabulous. We'll let Alistair go. That was great. What are you thinking, Ryan?
Ask me in about 5 or 6 or 7 hours from now. Let me see how Celtic start the game. Let me see the first half hour. It's all about how Celtic start the game, really, because if they start on the front foot and do everything that we know that they can do, because, you know, I mean, the game at the weekend will still be in their head, you know, the fact that they gave away a 2-goal lead. But this is a blank canvas. Like, you can go into this game knowing that they need, well, not that they need points, but, you know, they need a response after the Borussia Dortmund game. That was a really bruising game in Germany that night. So I don't think there's as much expectation, as you quite rightly said, than there was before the Dortmund game that Celtic could potentially get a result. I think we've all been sobered by that result, to be honest with you. And we felt the might of Borussia Dortmund that night. But, that lack of expectation might work in Celtic's favour going into this game. The fact that people are quite down on their European escapades at the moment, even although they won that home game at the start of the season. It's unlucky having Borussia Dortmund and then Atalanta in 2 away games. It's quite a difficult draw. We're glad that we got the Bratislava game first. That gave us a bit of confidence, but going into Dortmund and then Atalanta is a big ask, and then back home to Leipzig for the fourth game is going to be difficult too. But you're in the Champions League. You're expected to face off against good teams, and Atalanta are a team to strive for. Yeah, they're a team to strive for and be like, because they do everything the right way. Their infrastructure's right. They back their manager. They back the manager with the correct players that fit into his system. And they're getting the rewards of that. Europa League champions, they deserve to be where they're at the moment. I think they were 4th in Serie A last season, so it's not just as if they had a freakish run to the final. They're good in Serie A too. Week by week, they are just a good team. It's a game of football at the end of the day, and to put it down, into simple terms, it's 11 v 11, and if Celtic can keep it 11 v 11 and carve out some opportunities, then anything can happen on the night. They've got players that can hurt Atalanta. There's some players in Celtic's team that could be playing for maybe not Atalanta, but teams in Serie A that could hurt.
Atalanta wanted to sign Matt O'Reilly, so
there you go. Absolutely. Ademola Lookman was at Charlton before he went to Everton and RB Leipzig. So, it's these players that they're scouting and looking for, so they can cause Atalanta problems. I think there's a bit of a bogeyman sort of thing going on about Atalanta because of the way that they play and the way that their manager sets them up. But if Celtic play to the best of their abilities, they can cause them problems on the night. Just make it difficult for them and don't give them easy opportunities. And I say that, and then I see it happening every single European game Celtic play. They give teams easy opportunities and really and they're quite easy to play against at times, especially away from home. It's about time they be a bit resolute. Yes, go on the front foot, but be resolute when you need to defend. And then if you can do that, then anything can happen. Off days can happen, even for good sides like Atalanta. And if that's the case, then Celtic should punish that.
Hamish, Celtic's goal has to be to stay in the contest for as long as possible tonight. It really does. You cannot give yourself
if you lose an early goal.
Yeah, you feel the worst, don't you? Because you know you're going to lose. You're going to lose another goal. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? That's the clusters, Achilles' heel. But we have to stay in the contest tonight beyond half an hour, first half, if we can. And as I say, that's all down to protecting the football, and your passing has to be sharper. Your ball retention is key tonight, because you're playing against a team who play a system. They will pick you off. You thought Dortmund were good. This team are razor sharp and clinical, and arguably you could make a case for them being better than Dortmund. Maybe not at this minute because they're transitioning a bit, as Alistair said, but Celtic have got to be better than they were in Germany, and by being better, you have to protect that football and give yourself every chance to gain a stranglehold and a foothold in the game, because we have players that can score and can be just as clinical up top as the likes of Lookman and, the man from Genoa, whose name I always struggle to pronounce. Ryan, who is he? What's his name again?
Retegui.
8 goals in 8
games, He's the top scorer. So obviously it has to be watched. But, I still feel that it could be a big night for the likes of Kuhn, Kyogo and Maeda. And also as well, if Arne Engels plays, we're hoping to see the Arne Engels that played against Slovan Bratislava. We need that Arne Engels to turn up tonight. And, everybody to be on their mettle and on their game. Yeah, we know Celtic traditionally in the Champions League away from home, they struggle. You have to, at some point, you have to rip that narrative up. You have to, shatter it and say, right, do you know what? No more. So Celtic have to show something tonight, and I include the manager in that as well.
Yeah.
I know he said that he wasn't for turning and he's not that kind of manager, but they have to do something slightly different tonight, or else, again, we could end up seeing them get what's coming to them against a formidable team.
So what was the chat from the manager then yesterday, Tony?
He was sort of saying that he's not he was asked about being pragmatic, defensive, part of the bus, and he said, "I'm not that person. I'm never that manager. You look at all my teams I've been coaching for 25 years. I'm aggressive." So going back to what Alistair said, that maybe be Celtic's best chance, going toe-to-toe. Como did it and won 3-2. So if you are talking about an ideal time to possibly get Atalanta, then it might be right now. And what's the worst scenario that happens here, Hamish? Where Celtic are where you thought they would be after 3 games, 3 points on the board,
Yeah,
which you said right at the start of the.
It's the manner of
yeah,
the defeat
correct.
if we do lose tonight. That for me, and I think I personally don't think Celtic will get a result tonight. People can say it's defeatist or whatever. I would argue it's realistic. As I said last night, I want to see something different from the team tonight, and I want there to be something for us to take in. Because you're right, Tony. We lose tonight. We've still got 3 points from our opening 3 games, and we've still got so many opportunities going forward. But we can't have another collapse, because that is not going to be good for anyone at the club. It's not good for the club's image. It's not good for the confidence of the players. It's not good for how the fans are feeling ahead of the game. We need to see something really positive tonight. I think we will. I think we'll see a much better Celtic tonight. But it's a tough level, away from home. Atalanta, I know we got a comment in there saying, relax everyone, they're not Real Madrid or Bayern Munich. They're the Europa League winners from last season. Like, it's a real tall order tonight. And I don't think many of us have much confidence in Celtic away from home in Europe. I think at Celtic Park it's different, but away from home, I have very little confidence in this team away from home at that level, because I just don't think we have it. I really hope they prove me wrong tonight, and that's what I'm praying for.
And the record, backs that up completely. Look at their record away from home in Europe. It is utterly deplorable. They are an easy team to play away from home in Europe, regardless of what competition they play in. Yes, I know they got the result against Lazio, and Lazio were a decent team at that point. But look at the Champions League record. Is it the only away win against Spartak Moscow back in 2012? That's the only win they've managed away from home. I've got to be honest. I would treat a draw.
Oh, Anderlecht.
Yeah, Anderlecht away as well. Yeah, correct. I would take a draw like a win tonight in this sort of situation that Celtic are in. If Celtic were to get anything from this game, then I would be absolutely delighted. But there has to be a couple of things that happen in order for that to be the case. I think it's important also that they don't get hammered in this game for the goal difference as well between the teams that Celtic will be facing off against to get into the playoff round. There's quite a few teams that are still on 0 points. One being RB Leipzig, incredibly. We'll see if that's going to change at some point, because Celtic play them next.
They play Liverpool tonight, Leipzig,
and you would expect Liverpool to win that game quite comfortably.
They could be coming to Celtic Park with 0 points.
Yep, and that becomes a shootout at Celtic Park, because Leipzig will bring their big guns. They'll get Benjamin Sesko, one of the best young strikers in.
Don't panic me more, Ryan. We don't need to panic me for that.
I know.
Leave that 2 weeks.
Yeah, but if they could get anything from tonight, it would be. I don't like to call it a bonus, but that's what it feels like at this moment in time. If you can get even a point tonight, if you can show resoluteness and get a point on your travels, then I think it would G everybody up for the rest of the campaign, and G everybody right back up after that euphoric high that they got against Bratislava. It was brought down after Dortmund. That can happen. Bad nights can happen. They've happened before under Brendan Rodgers. It's not a new thing that's happening, but they've got a chance tonight, if they play to the best of their abilities, that they could maybe get something from the game. But they've got to be spotless in order for that to be the case.
Brendan also said that he'd been reminding these guys that they belong at this level. Okay, prove it.
Show it. Yeah.
Show it. Go and give us a performance. Go and summon up something like Lazio away. That's all you want. And as Ryan says, that would give you your oomph back, wouldn't it? Your belief again. And you just want to see the players remind themselves why they're at this level of competition and produce a performance to boot. Like you, Hamish, I think everybody's pessimistic about getting a result, but surprises. Yeah.
Just quickly, I don't want it to become a skid. And, you've had the disappointment of the Aberdeen game, and then you move into the Atalanta game. And if you get beat in that game and you get beat heavily, then all of a sudden you're looking at the Motherwell game, which could be quite a difficult tie as well at Fir Park. I don't want it affecting everything to do with Celtic. Celtic on the whole, they're in a pretty good place at the moment. Both Champions League, I know they lost their last game, but they've got 3 points on the board. And in the league, they're 6 points clear of Rangers, joint top with Aberdeen. I want them to still have that feel-good factor going into the game at Fir Park. If they show a battling performance and are unlucky in defeat, then I won't complain whatsoever. But it cannot be a brutal battering tonight. It just can't happen. And if it does, then it would be a really sort of negative standpoint that everybody would suddenly be in going into future games. And I don't want that. I want Celtic to do themselves proud tonight. If they get the result, brilliant. But as long as they put in a good performance, then I think they can cling on to that for the next games.
Try and be positive, Hamish, says Mary. Mary, I very often try and be positive. It's tearing me apart. I think I was scarred by the Dortmund game. I'm at the point where it's up to Celtic. For me, it's up to Celtic now tonight to show us something. And listen, when we're getting to kick off, my alarm will be going off at 2:40 a.m, guys. Feel sorry for me. And I'll be getting up, and in the back of my mind, I'll be thinking, let's do this. Let's go and try and win this game or draw this game. And when the game starts, that's how I'll be feeling. Just right now, I just think it might be a tough night, but it's up to Celtic to show something. No, Carter Vickers is not in the squad. You'll never walk alone. Neither is Greg Taylor. So we'll see. Okay, guys, enjoy the game. Tony, especially. Enjoy your day in the lovely city of Bergamo. And we'll catch up with you all. Well, will you guys be doing videos today?
Pre and post match we'll be doing videos. So we'll be live around about, so it's a 5:45 kick off. So 4:30 we'll be live when the teams come out, and then we'll be live as soon as we can after the game. Once all the work's done and we can talk about what's transpired, good or bad, we'll be there regardless.
Perfect.
Although I said that guys. we weren't live after the Dortmund game, but you can understand that. But because it's an earlier kickoff, I would pretty much guarantee that we're going to be on live.
Perfect. Right, great stuff. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Sorry I didn't get more of your comments up on screen. It was obviously quite a busy one today. Enjoy the game. Hopefully things go well, and we'll catch up with you all tomorrow.